Hey, what's up, y'all? It's Steve again, Harmless Rebel. Time for another hard rock and heavy metal update. Just kind of jump in here. Just picked this one up a couple weeks ago, maybe a month ago. I actually thought that I already had this in my collection. I have a feeling when I purged some of the old beat up stuff a few years ago, this is one of them that got purged. But this is the debut album from Udo Animal House. Just a fantastic album. Nobody really knew what was going to happen with Udo after he left Accept, and came up with another band, similar sound, just as good. And I love these UDO albums as much as I love the Accept stuff. So I'm glad he went that direction. Next up, this is one that a few of us, myself, Scott Waters, Kevin Colehouse, a lot of us have been talking about this record for at least a good decade. You know, just hoping that this would finally get pressed to vinyl. I know a couple different labels were going back and forth with the band trying to get them to press it. And I think at one point they were going to do it themselves. I don't remember exactly what all happened or what all transpired over the years, but they finally broke down and let Bombworks press these, and we now have the entire the entire Believer discography on vinyl now. Really happy to have this, though. Extraction from Mortality. This has always been a favorite of mine. I believe this one crossed over too, if I remember correctly. I believe this one actually got a little bit of play and was picked up by some of the thrash scene. The cool thing about this one, I love all the Believer stuff all the way through, and they get a little more progressive and experimental later on, and I love that stuff too. This first record, though, has a real punk feel to it that the later albums didn't, and this is one I always seem to. I love those newer albums, and I'll pull those out and listen. And when I listen to those, it makes me want to pull this one out and listen to just the raw punk feel of their debut. It's a thrash album. Don't get confused. Really killer, though. Highly recommend grabbing these from Bombworks. I think you can get it from Bombworks or from Boone's Overstock. Either way, they only did about 600 of these total, I believe, 2 different colors. So get those while you can. Next up, so funny enough, I've been looking for the first comp, I just got it. I ordered this like maybe 2 years ago, and finally pulled it out and gave it a spin. The main reason I didn't give it a spin right away is because I knew all of the songs. I knew all of these bands except for one. But this is the BBC sessions, the Friday at the BBC Friday Rock Show radio sessions, Volume 2. Now, I've been looking for Volume 1 forever, and it finally popped up on Rockadrome yesterday. So I finally just ordered this yesterday, or the first Volume 1 of this. Each one is 2 LPs. Each one has multiple songs. So this one has songs from More, Girl School, Sweet Savage, Diamond Head, Black Axe, Vardis, and Raven. And if you saw one of my prior videos, the Black Axe stuff I had never heard before, and it really blew me away. And I was shocked that I had never heard of this band because they're such a good band. I mean, these are 4 killer songs. And it turns out I did know the band. They changed their name to Wolf right after this and released one of my favorite new wave of British heavy metal albums with that Wolf debut. But really killer. I haven't heard the first one. If it's half as good as this one, they're both worth getting. These are unofficial. I think they were officially released as separately. So I think there's like 4 or 5 of them that were released years ago, but those are hard to find. So I do recommend grabbing these unofficials. They did a great job on them, and just some killer new wave of British heavy metal BBC sessions. Next up, Smolder. I might have talked about this before. I can't remember. This is a Violent Creed of Vengeance. This is their most recent album. The singer of this is Sarah from Locked Horns. She's one of the reviewers. She's actually the weak point in the band. Every time I listen to them, I have to give it a song before I get used to her voice. She doesn't have a great voice. The band is fantastic though, and once her voice, it always bugs me when she first starts singing, and I just kind of get used to it after that. Not the best review. It is really good traditional metal though. They do I don't know if these are Frazetta pictures or if they're just going for the Frazetta look, but they've all got this Frazetta style artwork on the cover. And they're all good albums. I wouldn't say that they're great albums, but I do like all of them enough that I've bought them all, even though I'm not a huge fan of her voice. Still good music, still good songs. Next up, finally grabbed this one. I've been looking at this for, man, when did this come out? Probably 5 or 6 years ago. And I finally grabbed it. This is Death and Destiny. This is, I believe this is everything that Mithra released. So their singles are on here. I don't believe there's anything else. So songs 1 through 4, 79. 5 through 8, 80, 9 through 13 are from 81. They were one of the early new wave of British heavy metal bands. One of the more known. These guys and Jameson Raid were some of the early guys that everybody kind of looked up to. They did Buried by Time and Dust did a really good job with this. I think Rockadrome has also now reissued the same material. I don't remember if it's the same cover, but they've also released this as well. In general, I really like Rockadrome, but in general, I like Buried by Time and Dust a little bit better. The Buried by Time and Dust pressings are more consistent. I don't know if it's just who they use. High Roller use it. Did I say Rockadrome? I meant High Roller repress that. High Roller uses GZ, and they've been kind of inconsistent. Some of the stuff I get from High Roller sounds fantastic. Some of it's just okay. Next up, Resurrection Day from Rage. Another band that's been around forever. I think their first album was like 82 or 83. It may have actually been earlier than that. I've got all their early stuff. Rage was one of those bands that kind of fell off my radar. I have their 80s albums, and I really loved all of them. And then about 8 years ago, I ran across one of their newer albums and picked it up. And it's a totally different band. They were traditional metal early on. Now they're a power metal band. I really dug that album though, and I haven't felt the need with like I did with like Blind Guardian, where I need the whole discography. But when I see stuff in the store for sale, I grab it, and that's what this was. This was I believe this was their most recent album. They may have a newer one though. This is 2021. Another one that I've had just sitting in the pile here since 2021, and finally got around to spinning. Again, it's just really killer power metal. I really dig it. It's not super derivative like a lot of the bands. There is some original stuff in here. It's not just the crazy double bass nonstop. There's a couple really killers there. There's about 4. I like the whole album, but there's like 4 really standout tracks. So definitely worth picking up if you're into power metal. Next up, this is one that pretty much everybody has wanted pressed to vinyl. I remember about 10, 12 years ago, a bunch of people were doing videos about albums that they would like to see pressed to vinyl, and this made a couple people's lists. I talked about them maybe 7 or 8 years ago. I ran across one of their cassettes, or actually the cassette for this album, a Goodwill. I remembered them from the radio and stuff, but I had never owned any of their albums. I really dug that cassette. So I was really happy when this came out. But this is Brother Kane. I believe is that just Brother Kane, right? Yeah, their self-titled album. Really killer southern metal, I guess you would call it. Southern hard rock. Kind of doing their own thing. It's got that southern feel to it, and it's just I've always really dug it, and I'm really happy that this is finally on LP. Definitely recommend grabbing this. I think they only did a few hundred of these. I think this is Boone's Overstock too. No, I'm sorry. This is Girder Records. Check out Girder Records for that one. Next up, this is one I really have to thank John Bitbot Boom for. It's one I heard everybody talking about in the VC. A lot of people were showing it. Um, I never felt the need to grab it though. And then maybe it was Vance that first talked about it, but either Vance, I know John said he had heard it and it was really good. And I knew my local store had it. They've had this for like a year. It's just been sitting there, and I would pass it up, and I'd think about it every time, and I ended up passing on it. And finally, though, after they talked about it, I ended up grabbing it, and it's fantastic. So this is Van Halen, the Zero demos. It's demo versions of Woman in Love, House of Pain, Running with the Devil, She's a Woman, Let's Get Rockin', Big Trouble, Somebody Get Me a Doctor, Babe Don't Leave Me Alone, and Put Out the Lights. These are all fantastic. It's really well recorded. It's different cuts of the songs, and it's really cool to hear these early cuts. This is all from '76, so I believe the debut was '78, if I remember correctly. It might have been '77. Regardless, this is a fantastic unofficial pressing. Definitely one that you should look out for before they disappear. This is one that's popped up a few times. I think it was originally released on CD like 25 years ago, and definitely worth having in your collection if you're a Van Halen fan. Next up, this one looks kind of rough, but this has always been a favorite of mine. All for One from Raven. I have multiple copies of this. I have a first U.S. pressing. I have a deluxe pressing that I believe High Roller did. But I ran across this. The cover's a little bit beat, but the vinyl is pretty much mint. And the reason I grabbed it, it was cheap, number one, but it's a bonsai pressing. And I've always loved the bonsai pressings from Canada. Let's see if I have the label sticking out. Yeah, you can see the classic bonsai center ring there, but fantastic. It sounds killer. Glad to have this one. Next time I see Raven, I might get this one signed. I see them usually about once a year, sometimes twice a year. They don't live far from here, just a couple hours away, so they play Atlanta usually once or twice a year. And then last but not least, man, this is a Grail and a half. I have been looking for this at least 15 years. It's one that I've always known about, and I've always wanted to have a copy of. There's not a lot, I believe. They originally pressed 3,500. Only 3,000 with this jacket. There were 500 that were in a record label jacket. I've never seen one of those, and even these never pop up. And I was shocked to walk into a CD warehouse and see it on the wall, and then to find out it is basically in near mint condition. I couldn't buy it fast enough. These things are going for $200 plus. I didn't even pay half of that, so I got a killer deal. But this is the self-titled EP from Overkill. Again, this was one of my top 3 Grails for as long as I can remember, and it's fantastic. If you guys ever run across a copy of this, you got to get it. They don't pop up. Again, there were 3,000 press, so God knows how many there actually are out there at this point. I'm sure probably half of those have been destroyed, but Rotten to the Core, the first release of Overkill, 2 of their bigger songs. You've got Fatal If Swallowed and The Answer. This is just a 10 out of 10 EP. That's it, guys. I hope everybody's doing good. I will see you soon, and take care, VC. Bye.